Hello everybody. In this quick Maya tutorial, I want to go into a little bit more detail about using emissive lights inside of Maya, specifically Hardware 2.0 or Viewpoint 2.0, depending how you look at it. Now obviously what the recommendations for 3D digital design is that you use Maya Hardware 2.0 over Arnold, depending on your situation of course. Some people are choosing to use Arnold because they have access to more powerful rigs and therefore don't mind the extra render time. But for most of us, Maya Hardware 2.0 will do the job. However, its limitations are usually something that we run into very quickly, and there's a bunch of things that we usually want to know how to do before we move on any further. So of course, there's probably plenty of things we could cover in this video, but I just want to, obviously concentrate on emissive lights in particular, which is obviously a word that we use for light-giving properties. So things like LEDs, your screens, and televisions, mobile phone devices, lamps, bulbs, anything like that, things that actually give out light. We want to be able to kind of create some of those, which is great. So I basically built a small scene, hopefully, which you can see here, where what we're going to do is just hide this information here. And we're going to use this scene. I'll make this scene available, by the way, so you can download it and view it anytime you want and play around with it via MLS, and you can do whatever you want with it. Ultimately, it only took probably half an hour to kind of make. And as you can see here, I've basically created a small bedroom scene where we've got a number of emissive lights just to explore what we can do with this topic. Okay, just give some examples of what's going on in here. So first one is, if you zoom out, you can see this is just a small diorama scene. It's nothing really nothing much going on there. You can see all the dodgy faults underneath and behind it, which is always good. But ultimately, you can see when we zoom in here, we've created a bedroom scene where we've got a lovely little kind of like neon beer sign. Here we've got a television. You can see a little sort of LED light there. Of course, we've got this fake PlayStation 5 style console device just sitting there. And then the first of our kind of major devices is a lamp, and you can see the lamp here has a beautiful material, simple orange material, and then obviously it's giving out light. But the trick here that I want to reveal to everybody is how we do that. So I'm just going to reveal that just quickly, and I'm just going to press W just to move this. And what I want you to be able to notice here is that actually there are two things going on here. One, you can actually see that spotlight hidden there, but there is of course a light, and if I select that light here, orange lava lamp, it's actually there. I've just hidden it in the meantime, but it's two things. One, we've got an actual point light doing all the light work, and over here we actually have a material that simply just looks like it's giving light out. It's not it doesn't take shadows the way other things do, and therefore it looks like it's giving the light out naturally. It also isn't casting shadows, which is really important for authenticity. And of course that looks really effective. And of course if I was to select that, I'm just going to quickly grab that orange light, and of course you can see in the properties for this we can change the intensity, if we wanted to kind of animate that or make it up and down, just drag it up and down, sorry. And of course you can change the color of these things as well. You can imagine here, you want those to match. What doesn't make sense is an orange lamp giving out blue light. That's not believable. But the second we kind of get those colors to match, things look a little bit more believable. And that's what it's all about. It's creating the illusion that things are giving out light. And the exact same goes for this sign here. I've tried to create a really cheesy, basic kind of neon kind of pipe lighting using the text creator, which you can do anytime you want by going to create and then type just over there. Really, really great for creating some simple 3D text without having to do too much work. And it's pretty much the same thing. It is, when I take this away and separate it away, you can see here this is just a 3D model that has that. It has no ambient shade, and it essentially looks like it's actually giving light out. But of course the light is caused by, where is it, red beer sign, is just another point light. You can see here that is casting, you can see it works like a light, it casts shadows and all that stuff. It has brightness qualities and all that jazz. So again, those colors match, and of course, this beer sign itself doesn't give shadows, and therefore looks like it's actually casting that light out, which is, again, it's all part of the great illusion. And similarly, we go over here, we can see that we've got a more complex sort of setup where we have a desktop lamp over here, kind of casting a kind of white light, kind of similar to if you were working at nighttime, you might cast one. We have a screen which looks like it's giving light out again. Again, that's a really simple material. that looks like it's giving blue cyan light, laptop giving like pink light, and again it's the same setup. There's actually loads of little point lights in there doing all the hard work. So I'm going to switch those on now just so we can see them. We can see that that's actually an area light, just to give us that lovely shape. And of course if I go to this lamp, we look inside, we actually have a little bulb in there, but the bulb isn't actually doing much. The actual thing is caused by, again, if I look here, we have a bedside lamp point light, and that's doing all the hard work. I may put that more inside just to be more accurate. And of course, just a little bit more final explanation, of course, it's just a little bit of moonlight coming in from outside, which is caused by this, just this basic area light here. You can see if I move that, we get that nice transition. Oh, whoops. Of course, I just want to create something reasonably sensible there. Nothing fancy. Kind of like, I love it when lights come down the back of a wall, so I always try to create that space there. So let's go about recreating one of those for yourself then, okay? So there's lots of different things that we can do, but first of all, let's learn about creating, you know, fake emissive materials, just more than anything. That's probably where we want to begin. So let's say we create a sphere to begin with. And this is essentially the same process I've used for every one of these lights. I create a polygon object of whatever kind, you know, a light-giving thing, whether it is a neon sign or a screen or a device, and basically I go to create sphere. There we go, and it's just a sphere. Now, inside of Maya, we haven't talked about materials an awful lot, and if you've been through the material section already, that's fine. But a really simple way to add new materials is just to hold right-click with this object selected and scroll down to assign new material. And by default, the easiest and simplest materials for Maya to process are of course Lambert. They have no particularly fancy qualities, and we can see here that their common attributes include things like color, their transparency, ambient color. Now of course color affects, you know, the surface color of that. In this case I'm going to make this you know, just bright white just so it stands out. Now of course this is a very, there goes that auto cancel, always gets me. You've got transparency, so of course, you know, we can make that object transparent, which of no use to me right now at all. And this is where things get interesting. Ambient color. This tends to be about, you know, how much of the ambient lighting that a surface object takes, and of course this can be mistaken for what Maya calls incandescence, which is the same thing as emissive quality materials essentially. So if I change the ambient color, you can see here, if I change the ambient color to white, it is not taking any lighting from around the room. It's essentially saying my ambient color is bright white, which is great. And it does, in our kind of, I guess, in as far as we're concerned, that pretty much does the job for us. And so you could change that color if you want. I tend to work with the incandescence because it's more sort of culturally correct, let's put it that way, or technically correct. So again, it does the same thing again. It says this property, the surface, essentially is, it's colored this way because it's lit that way. It's giving this color out. Now of course that doesn't do anything because it's not an actual light source. And essentially what we want to do is tie a light source to that. A couple of things we can do there, of course. Now in this particular essence, I'm going to go for something really obvious. Let's go for a nice bright, we don't have any green in here, so let's cast this to be a green sphere. And of course you can see here, it's just a round sphere with a green light. So what we want to do now is attach a light to this. So what I'm going to do is go to create lights, and I think given that it's a sphere, a point light is probably the best option. So I've created a point light, and you can see here nothing particularly fancy, but what I definitely want to do is maybe move that point light inside this sphere. Now, the first thing that's going to happen is, you can imagine if the point light's inside this sphere, then all that light's probably getting trapped inside there. So what we want to do is disable shadows on this object here. Cast shadows. So how to find that essentially is, if any object selected, sorry, I'm just going to go in here, I've selected my sphere, and obviously you're going to go to sphere shape, and then of course what you want to do now is head down to render stats. And render stats has a bunch of really interesting things here that you can just disable if you don't want them. Casting shadows is one of them. Okay, so I disable that, and now the light is definitely now coming through those walls. It's a light source. It probably never receives shadows either. So let's just take that off while we're here, and you don't have to worry about anything else here. There's nothing too funny going on there. But we'll come back to that. So I've still got, if I go back to my point light, which is obviously down here on my stack, in my outliner. What I want to do now is change the color of this to match the green sphere. So now it looks exactly the way we wanted it to. It looks like that green sphere is giving out this light. However, if I try to move the sphere, obviously the green light's going to be stuck inside of there. So what I'm going to do is parent that light to the sphere. So I'm just going to select the light, then I'm going to shift select the sphere, and I'm going to type P. And that essentially means that that light is now stuck to the sphere. So if I happen to move this sphere at any point, the light will come with it. And that's exactly what we wanted to begin with. We can see that it's even casting shadows now, which is excellent. And if you really, really want, you can disable any lights casting shadows. So again, as you can see, this now looks like an actual light source, even though we've not really done much, and that's exactly what we want. But we want to edit those light properties a little bit further. So of course, this being a point light, its default intensity is usually very high. It's also got this no decay rate, and of course, depending what you're trying to do, you might want a different decay rate. So if I select linear, we can see that the decay rate drops instantly. But the intensity might need to go up a bit just to match that. And I usually, because it's a small indoor based scene, I tend to stick with something like quadratic. Now of course that means that the light source is now decaying much faster, and therefore things are much closer to the original sphere. So again, this is about playing around with things, getting that right balance. So again, I think quadratic in this case is doing the job just fine. Play around with that intensity a little bit more. And essentially I've now got a new light source that looks like it belongs in this scene. And of course if I move that close to walls, it looks like a light source, and that's really all that we wanted to do today. And of course that's all about faking it. Okay, so in this case though, I'm going to obviously hide these. Actually, I'll just delete them. I don't need them anymore. Goodbye. There we go. So we're back to our normal scene. Now, let's think about this television for a second and just say how we wanted to say we want to do something nice and quick and cheesy again. I'm just going to go into face. Now, what you can do in Maya is you can actually assign materials specifically to just, per polygon. Not advised in most cases, but let's try it out here. So I'm just selecting this face, and I'm going to go to, excuse me, I have terrible coughing problems today. I'm just going to assign a new material. I'm going to stick with a Lambert, and of course I'm going to stick the incandescence up to white. And of course a television that's just giving out white light. It's a little bit boring, but we get the vibe. And of course in this case a point light wouldn't really do the job. What I want here instead is maybe a ambient light. Sorry, not an ambient light, a area light. So I'm going to go to create, lights, area light, and there we go. Somewhere in the middle of the scene an area light has appeared, and of course what I want to do is of course move that into place. And the area light in this case is perfect for that, giving that sense of direction. You can see here that it has the area behind it doesn't get lit, and that's great because obviously a television's projecting light out one way. And of course if we use that, it looks quite genuine. It looks like this TV is now giving this beautiful burst of light. And if you really want, you can resize that ambient light to match that television. You can see I've actually gone a little bit larger than I should have there. And I'll keep it about there. There we go. That looks fine. And of course again, you can play around with things like the intensity. You may bring that down a little bit. If you really want, you can go all the way up, and you can see how that lights the scene up even further. You can imagine if somebody's lying in bed watching TV and all the colors are changing, you can imagine that light flickering up and down. Similar to any light, if you animate it, it just looks great. And of course that's really all it is. There's not actually anything more secret to this. It is just about kind of faking it until you make it, and it absolutely looks great. And of course we can drop that down to things like linear or quadratic again if we want to kind of just play around with that intensity a bit further. Okay, so hopefully that explains that process to you. It's all about making sure that if you're creating a new material, that new material has an incandescent color. And then if you're using that, what you want to do of course is then match it with a point light or an area light, sometimes a spotlight depending. And of course that's all about just basically creating the illusion that that surface is giving light out. And of course then what you can do is pair that light source to the actual object. And just do that one more time before I leave. Of course, what I want to do is I want to select the object I want to be paired first. So I'm going to select my area light to the object I want to lead. So I'm going to shift select the actual television, and I'm just going to press P on my keyboard for parent. And that's it, it's all done. Now if I look inside of here, I can see the mesh television. Underneath of that, we can see it has a child, which is the area light, which means I don't have to do any more work. So I can still move that child independently, but if I ever select that television and start rotating it, the TV now comes, controls where that light's, what that light's doing, and that's exactly what we wanted from the very beginning. In any case though, any questions, comments, anything else that you want to explain further, just feel free to hit me up in class or in the sort of weekly studio meetings, or of course there is the end of week support sessions as well, perfectly fine. Alright, see you next time, and thanks for watching.